read you some Islamic hadith. The last hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree. And a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him. But the tree, Qarqad, would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. So what this hadith is telling you, that before the end of days, there will come a time where Muslims would be fighting and killing all the Jews, will be hunting them down, and the Jews would be running away. And the Jews would be hiding behind rocks and trees to save themselves. But the trees and rocks will speak out. Allah will make them speak out and call upon the Muslims and say, come, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come, Muslim, come kill them. Except one tree, the Qarqad tree, because it's apparently a Jewish tree. I want you to understand this hadith. This is Sahih Muslim 2922, book 54, hadith 103. Sahih hadith. This is a foundational part of Islamic teaching. You cannot separate this from Islam. You could go look this up. Sounds to me like Islam is inherently genocidal against Jewish people. But if you disagree, then call in and tell me. Tell me why you disagree, because the show starts right now. Hello, everybody. So today I have some sad news. Well, welcome everyone. Today is November 26, 2023. I'm your host, Armin Navabi, and joining me today is JMike. Hi, JMike.
Hello.
So I'm really happy that I'm sad that I have this news today, but I was looking forward to doing this show with you together, because last time I did a co-host with you, it was it was a great experience. But today I'm just going to quickly go over the sad news, and I'm sorry guys that I have to tell you this. The ACA lost a beloved member of our family this week. On Monday, the crew cat died, and we are dedicating this episode to crew cat, formerly known as Trace. We are running a fundraiser to purchase a brick for the crew cat at the building. If you'd like to help us memorialize the crew cat, then please click the donate button below in the chat. Any funds suppressing what is needed to purchase a brick will be added to the building fund. Please also in the live chat, please type !crew cat so that those will be basically your well wishes. So please do that. And thanks everyone for your support for this difficult time. Again, I've been here just for a while, but I really, even in the short time that I've been here at the ACA, I really love the crew cat. We talked about the crew cat a lot.
It's a warm spot for us, right? I mean, you go to the cam and it brightens up people. You see a cute little cat, it sucks because like anyone that's owned a pet and had to go through that, where you come to this decision on, what's best for that and not just kind of taking it for yourself. If you've been through that, it sucks. I wish no one have to go through that. I had a situation with my dog, and, one of my friends who owned a pet was with me when we had to put my dog down. And it's one of those things where it's like, people can be supportive around you as much, but you don't want anybody to go through that. I remember telling my friend, if you own a dog, you're going to have to experience this, and you shouldn't have to experience this twice or three times. You shouldn't have to experience it at any point. But unfortunately, that kind of, it's one of those things that comes with it. And if you, look back and you really felt like you've given it the best life you can, I think that's really, the best that you can do looking forward on it. So, I give my condolences to Vern and everybody at the ACA.
I'm seeing people are saying, using the ! crew cat, and people are saying, I'm sorry, Vern. So thank you guys in the live chat. Please keep that coming. Yeah. Thank you for all that. Anyways, let's move on. The Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So before we get started, we had the question of the week that we have to get to, which is, this is a fun part of the show that I always enjoy. So last week we asked you, what is a modern sin that God didn't think of 2,000 years ago? So number 3 from Colin, this was the response: modern sin that God didn't know about, ads on YouTube. Guys, what do you have against ads on YouTube? This is literally the reason why we have this show. Like, how would we be able to have this show if we didn't have ads on YouTube? So please watch them. Watch the ads. Don't skip them. Okay, just watch them all. You know, that's one way you can support the show.
Spoken like a true YouTuber, Armin.
Yes, don't skip the ads. Watch them all the way through. And then we have the second one from Steve. Steve says, the sin God didn't even know was going to be a sin in modern times is people who just post this as a response on social media. That's what the upvote is for, people. I don't know. It's like more strong. Why am I disagreeing with these comments? I should be less picky. It's stronger.
Hey, no, pushback is good, man. Like, if you push back, you know, we're all here to throw our ideas into the arena, even if they're silly or not. And if we have disagreement, we can fight as, you know, in a nice way as atheists in disagreement and have, you know.
Yeah. Because if you type this, it's a stronger way of showing support. You put some effort into it, instead of just clicking. It shows that you care about this a lot. Anyways, let's see if I'm gonna be picky about the last one as well. So the first one, the best one, is from Max. Max is saying a modern sin is whatever is going on with NFTs right now. Well, I can't judge because I haven't been following NFTs for a while now.
You haven't missed out on much. Non-fungible tokens. I was like, okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, if you're not familiar, that's a whole other thing to get into, which will take. I don't understand them, but I think that the tools that are applied on this show and elsewhere, and good reasoning and good standards of evidence, help protect you from things like NFTs. So. Yeah,
I try not to be fully for or against them, because it could go either way, right? So if you go full on against them and they end up becoming useful tools and it becomes essential to use them, then you're going to look like a hypocrite for using them. So I'm just like playing at both sides just in case. So I don't
give financial advice, and I don't think we should or I should or anything. But I will say it's not my bag of tea. Is all I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. We don't know what's going to happen with that. All right. So, we have the prompt for this week. Okay, so here's the question of the week. This is the fun part. Name a weird thing that God gets offended by. Ooh, this is good. Do you have any ideas?
I do. I wanted to serve you up kind of a volley here because I'm kind of curious. We've briefly kind of talked about it, but I think you can elucidate further. I'll just say that the kind of typical thing I think what's on everybody's mind: masturbation and sex. Sex is awesome, so I don't really understand that. But I want to bring up something maybe different, because I from my understanding, there's kind of a debate between imams on this or within Islam. And so if it's true, I guess I'll conditionalize it. If it's true that owning dogs as pets in Islam is haram, then that is what my answer would be. And before I say, that being the answer, I want to pass it to you. What's up with this? Mm-hmm. Is this haram? Is it not? Maybe shed a little light on it.
Well, it's actually weirder than that. So it's not haram to own a dog in Islam if you're using it for hunting, but you can't have them as pets. Unless even for hunting, you can't have them. Technically, you can't have them. If you want to really be true to the hadith, you can't have them if they are purely black. You're supposed to kill them if they're purely black, but you don't have to kill. So Muhammad at some point wanted you to kill all the dogs because for some reason he hated dogs. Islam is very anti-dog and very pro-cat for some reason. They love cats in Islam, and according to Islamic hadith. But so Muhammad at some point asked Muslims to kill all the dogs, and then an incident happened and it backfired. So then he said, okay, don't kill all of them, but make sure you kill the ones that are purely black, because that one is definitely a devil. The black dog is a devil. So that one has to go. But the dog itself is najas in Islam, which means impure, like spiritually impure. So there are a few things in Islam that are najis, like pigs, dogs, blood, some other things that I don't know if I can even mention on the show, dead bodies, bodily fluids that I'm not going to name. They're najis. Non-Muslims are also najis. If you touch a non-Muslim, you're supposed to wash your hand. So if you have that, the reason why you can't have a dog as a pet, because you have to bring it in your home, and they make everything else najis, because whatever they touch, they make everything najis, and then you can't pray because you have to clean the area that has touched the dog.
You're having to go pray. It's constant work of cleaning and pray. But isn't that like
yeah?
Wouldn't that be a good sign? You're like praising Allah at all times. It's like no, like over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, you can't eat, like if your hand is najis and that touches your food, it's a sin now to eat that food. So that's why you shouldn't let them in your home. So you could have them you could also have them as guards outside the home, or for hunting outside of the home, but not as a pet inside the home. That's a sin. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I'll stick with the answer that I gave then, I guess.
All right. Yeah. That was a little bit too much detail. Did I get into too much of that?
No, that's good. That's why I wanted to serve it up, because I was like, well, I got Armin, so I could just bring this up then, and then it'll be a different kind of answer. And maybe I'm wrong, so that's why we'll have you explain it. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. We have a lot of great calls today. We have wow. This is a good day. This is a good day. So let's take our calls. We should go with Peter. Let me bring in Peter. Okay, so Peter from Illinois is saying, if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Hi, Peter.
Yeah, and I just real quick, Peter, I want to say,
what's your name?
Hey, Peter, just real quick, is this correct what the call screener has? If God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Is that right?
That sounds strange.
Yes, that's the position.
Okay, well, okay. Yeah, but then you just gave me a first premise of like an argument, right? Because it is so if you're saying if God doesn't exist, then it is the case that we can't exist. Well, it's not the case we can't exist, because we do exist, and then God doesn't exist.
Wait. Let's just start from the top. Okay, so Peter, you say if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist. Explain.
Okay. I kind of, it's a conditional statement, as in I can't prove whether God exists or not. I'm trying to describe what would happen if God existed, which is, if God exists, then it'd be as if he's imagining us, right? Like, imagine yourself as a character, and you give him all the intricacies you have. You have, like, if we, just to be clear, we define God as like a guy who is, or an entity, not a guy, like an entity who is omniscient, omnipotent, and benevolent. I believe those are the three, right?
Okay, wait, Peter, are you talking about something that could be, or are you talking to us about something that is? You're saying if there was a God. First of all, you're saying you don't know if there's a God. You seem to have no. You're saying if there was a God, you could be his imagination.
I can't prove he exists.
Well, okay.
Peter,
real quick. Yeah, I'm sorry, just because this to me seems like very easy, done in the water, quick, right? And the reason why I'm seeing it this way is I'm seeing this as a conditional statement, right? So the antecedent is if God doesn't exist, and the consequent is then we can't exist, right? Or it is the case that we can't exist.
Right.
You gave me the first premise of a modus tollens argument, right? So I could just say back to you, if God doesn't exist, then it's the case we can't exist. But it's not the case that we can't exist. My support for that premise right here. And then the conclusion just follows. Therefore, God, well, if you want to say, you're saying if God doesn't exist, then we can't exist, right? Well, so, I mean, I'm not really understanding, like, if he doesn't exist or he does exist. Because if it's the case that he does exist, then it's going to follow that God does not exist, right? So I want to make sure we have that consequent or the antecedent down. Do you have it as God doesn't exist or God does exist? Because that's going to help me.
Okay, yeah, I guess I should clarify about I guess the better word of not existing is as in we exist as an imaginary.
Real quick, will you just tell me the antecedent of that premise? I just want to make sure it's right. Otherwise, what I'm saying won't work, right? Is it if God doesn't exist or if God does exist?
It would be if God exists, then And it's like if God exists, then we also exist. It'd be, how should I explain this? It's like
you're just but the reason why I keep interrupting, and I'm sorry to do this, it's just really important. If that's the case, if your premise, because I'm reading on the call screener and it's flipped, and so I want to make sure that this is correct. If what you're saying is if God exists, then we can't exist, you've given me an argument against theism, right? Because if it's true that I exist, then it's just the case that God does not exist, right? That follows from from the second premise, right? If P then Q, not Q, therefore not P.
I just want to explain I just want to explain, like, I guess I'm miswording. I'm not like I'm not an arguer. I'm just a regular guy.
That's fine. I just want to make sure. That's all.
Let me clarify this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
just like, you've given me an argument for atheism. That's why I'm like dumbfounded.
Well,
can I simplify? Hold on, Peter. Hold on. No, Peter, just hold on. Jimmy, can I just ask him some questions to simplify?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Just
let me give me some time with him. Okay, Peter. Do you believe that God exists or not? Yes or no?
I believe God exists. Sorry. Hello?
Yes, go on. Do you believe God exists? Yes or no?
Okay. Yes, I believe that God exists, and that therefore we are essentially imaginary.
Oh, no, wait. One step at a time. One step at a time, okay? So do you believe that we exist? Yes or no?
I think we're imaginary, essentially. We don't exist, and we don't hold any value or matter at all whatsoever.
Okay.
Outside of God.
Okay. So
does that make sense?
So when you say
okay.
So when you say we can't exist, what you mean by that is that we are God's imagination. Is that what you mean?
I guess that's the gist of it. Yes, we are like entirely within God's mind, and we don't exist outside of it. Like, we're not an entity outside of it. Like, we're not like a
do we
like a
exist?
machine that
Do we
built.
exist?
It's more like God is
okay, let's do one step. Peter. One step at a time. Okay. So you say we don't exist outside of God's imagination. Okay. Does that mean that we exist within God's imagination? If there's a God, we exist within God's imagination.
I think we actually. It's more like, it would be more like. Sorry, I would say no to that. As in, can I explain it? Like, I'm trying to communicate. I must be like, the phone must be like keep giving us a bit of lag time.
If we are God's imagination, aren't you saying we exist as His imagination?
No, I wouldn't think so. It's like if Walter White is an imaginary character, he doesn't actually exist. He's just a written being that, like, we all see as when we see Bryan Cranston play him, right? It's not like we exist. It's more like
it's a character. It's a character that exists. It exists as a character.
I don't think though. Like, I would say existence is not like, it's not like, I disagree with that word.
So so we don't. I'm not going to try to get into the meaning of existence. Okay, so by not existing means that we are just mere imaginations of God. Okay, that's what you're saying. There is a God, and all that we are the imagination of God. That's your claim, right? So I just want to say, is that accurate? Is that an accurate description of your view, right?
I don't feel like I think we disagree strongly on the meaning of existence. Still, I'm not using the word because we don't seem to be using the word existence in the same way. I'm just putting away that word. Okay. I'm not even using the word existence. I'm saying you say there's a God, and what we are is we are His imagination. I didn't even use the word existence. That's what you're saying. I'm not sure we're in. I feel like He just imagines us, right? It's like a concept, like a car. You imagine a car, but it doesn't exist, right? He might imagine it in his mind, but the car doesn't actually exist in his mind. It's just a concept.
So you're taking an issue with the word "are" when I say we are His imagination. You're taking issue with the word "are" because that would mean that we exist.
Yeah, I would say that. Yes, like I take issue with the word "are," I guess, but it's more like the character Brian, like the character Walter White doesn't move through time. He's just a character, right? We just see his story.
I have a basic understanding of your claim now. Now listen, let's move into the coming up with the argument or evidence part of it. So we now understand kind of what you're saying. Do you have any evidence or good arguments to back up this claim? There you go. Ahead.
Well, I guess the question, it's a conditional statement. So I can't prove. I can't necessarily prove that. Like, I'm not willing to put down, oh, God definitely exists or he doesn't exist. I'm just saying that we'd have to imagine a world where God, like, we'd have to essentially.
I'm not talking about wait, Peter. I'm not asking what your claims are anymore. We moved past the claim part. Okay, we have a basic understanding of what your claim is. Okay, I'm helping you understand what I'm asking you.
Okay,
I'm trying to tell you. So now that we have kind of established what your beliefs are, okay, we don't want to hear you repeat what your beliefs are. What we want now, is now for you to provide something that could back up what you believe, not the actual belief itself, something that backs up the belief.
And after that, I have an objection that's a rebutting defeater for this view. Just completely kills the view in cold water.
Okay, but go on, Peter. Do you have anything that backs up what you have to say?
Okay. Well, Well, the characters can we can assume that a character can be like, oh, I think I believe something, or they can be written such that they think things, or you can write such that they say certain things and they think these things, but they don't. They're just being written to act in a logically consistent manner, right? So, like, we could all just be thinking these things, but it's just God writing these things as happening. Does that make sense? Like, as concepts, as characters, right?
So, Peter, what I want you to understand that what you're doing is you're giving us more details about what you believe. Okay, but that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for something to back up what you believe, not provide more details about what you believe. Go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm not like I haven't like vocalized this a lot, so I'm just working through.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm just here to work through with you. I'm trying to be collaborative, not confrontational or
yes.
argue it. Like
you're fine. You're fine. There's just a fatal. There's a fatal flaw. No, you're good. You just explain to Armin that, and then I'll explain to you what the fatal flaw in the argument is, given the conditional that you gave me.
Peter, I'm not trying to shut you down. I'm just trying to help you understand what I'm asking. Okay, so it's not just you. A lot of people because a lot of people don't have these discussions, so they don't see the difference between providing details for what they believe in and backing it up. So this is not just a you problem. This is everybody that hasn't been involved in these conversations has this problem. So not everyone, but many people. So, but when I'm talking to you, I'm not trying to shut you down. I'm just trying to make you understand what the question that I'm asking. So don't think like I'm trying to be overly confrontational. Okay, but go on.
Okay. So I guess my argument would be, if God were to exist and we were not within the scope of imagination, or we were some outer entity, then I would say that then he can't really be benevolent to us, right? Because he doesn't have, like, if it's an outer entity, then you can't, like, there's all kinds of arguments. We've had these before, right? It wouldn't work. Therefore, right, this world where God exists and we're outside of his imagination probably wouldn't work, right? There's so much moral obligation for creating life, right? Like, much less like a child, like even like a creator with like.
Armin just wants to know what's the reason that got you to that conclusion, that made you think that, look, if there was a God to exist, we would be figments of its imagination. Just what's the reasons or the steps that support that or got you there? That's all he wants to know.
Yeah. I guess because to me, it seems, Peter, what you're doing is you're describing things that could be based on what you can imagine, and you are explaining to us that, like, what you're describing is like, I could see the world being this way. Okay, so these are not arguments; these are just imagining things, and you telling us that you could imagine it being such and such. That's it. Do you see the difference between that and actually providing an argument that supports your claim?
I feel like I'm making an argument, but I can see. I'll try a little bit harder. Sorry.
Okay. You gave a premise to an argument. You gave a conditional statement. If God exists, then we don't exist. But there's a problem with that. Like, someone like me and Armin, we look at that argument. It's like, okay, if God exists, and this is why I wanted to clarify if it was if God doesn't exist or if God exists, because this matters. Sounds like you're saying if God exists, then we can't exist, right? Or what you mean by that is we're like figments of his imagination, or we're concepts in the mind of God, right? We're divine thought, so to speak. But if that's true, right, then someone like me and Armin, right, we just go, well, we do exist. And then the conclusion follows that God doesn't exist. Imagine it this way. Imagine I walked around to somebody and I said, hey, I have a refrigerator, and everybody knows that that refrigerator exists, right? So if this refrigerator exists, then everybody knows about it. And I go stumble upon one of the fans of the show, and I go, hey, don't you know about this refrigerator? No. Well, then that refrigerator can't exist because it's constitutive. It's baked into the notion of that concept that everybody knows about it. So all we have to do to falsify it is find one person who goes, I don't even know that that proposition existed. I didn't even believe it, let alone know it, right? And so then it just follows. So you gave a premise to an argument. If God exists, then we can't exist. But we do exist. And so therefore God does not exist by your own lights, right? That conditional statement is proven false if the fact that we exist. You're going to have to make a case that we're just imaginary figures. But me and Armin aren't going to buy into that. We think we're real, right? You're going to have to give us what Armin's saying, giving us reasons to even suggest that that's even actually the case. But that just follows from a modus tollens argument.
Right. I would say that
I can help you, Peter. I can help you because you haven't had much experience like most people in building arguments. I could help you make it easier. Okay, so let's say, for example, I come up with you describe to us one scenario that you're saying could be true, right? So I will give you another alternative scenario, and you tell me why this one can't be true. That will make your, because for you to be able to show that your situation, the option that you're selecting is the only viable option, you have to be able to show why other options are not a good explanation or are impossible, right? So for example, let's say God does exist, okay? And God is all powerful and he created us. We're not, and we exist. So how do you refute that? If, like, let's say you have a scenario where God exists. I also have a scenario where God exists. You're saying in your scenario, we don't exist. Okay, I'm saying in our scenario, God, who's all powerful, created us and we do exist. How do you refute this scenario? Why can't this be true? If yours can be true, why can't my scenario be true? Why can't it be true?
Well, are we talking about our world, or are you talking about like some utopia, so to speak?
No, the world that we're experiencing, you're describing that God exists and we don't exist. I just give you an alternative scenario where in this world, God exists and he created us and we do exist. Why is if there is a God, like, why is your scenario okay and mine's not?
I think yours is okay because if it's a copy of our world, then it's like, then there's existing evil, right? Therefore, he can't be benevolent. That's the three criterion, right? Like the omnipotence, omniscience, and benevolence, right? So he can't exist in that world. If we're imaginary, then all this evil is made up and it doesn't matter, right? So therefore,
so you're
omniscient.
You're trying to,
right?
I see. So you're saying you're making us imaginary to solve the problem of evil. Am I understanding you correctly?
I'm not making. I would say yes. This is the only case where, look, I believe in God, but I don't know why I believe in God. It sucks, right? Like I don't have any good reason. I just have this hard belief, can't shake, and so I'm just trying to reason it out. I'm an activist trying to reason out why this. Why am I crazy, right? And so this is like, okay, well, this is the only scenario that I can think of is like how I'm coming.
Okay, so
notion.
I see what's happening. So Peter, let me know if I'm understanding what you're saying. So you believe in God, but you have some issues with the consequences of believing in God. So this scenario that you came up with makes it all work out. It lets you keep the God, but also doesn't contradict with this the problem of evil. So you're saying a lot of suffering in the world, and you cannot justify how an all-loving God would let all of that happen. So you came up with this theory to let God be, but also not have him be responsible for all this evil. Is that a fair assessment of what you're saying?
Well, I think here's a supporting argument. This is a nullifying argument for the world where we exist. The reason why I think God exists is because like if you want to think like critically, we're thinking about imaginary worlds, and in order for God to think critically, he needs to have the ability to think of evil, and therefore evil needs to exist in this imaginary world. You can't critically think without evil. You can't
Why?
imagine good without evil, right? Like there's no
what? Why? Why? I don't get that.
In the mind of God.
Why?
Because you'd have to, like as an entity, like as a thinking entity, right? Can you like different, like if there's no differentiating values, how do you do computation, right? If all the values are one, then there's no zeros, and you can't do computational like you can't even do Boolean algebra.
You don't think that I could choose to take
zero?
You don't think I could choose to take my mom to like her favorite restaurant or her favorite movie, and those be choices? Like they couldn't just be an array of selection of just things that are things that someone wants to do. Seems like
right, but then she would have to have things that she would rather not do, right? There has to be two options.
Yeah, but what's the problem with competing goods? That's what I'm saying. That's what I gave you. I gave you an option of competing goods.
Well, no, because it would say that they're not I wouldn't say they're necessarily competing goods. I would say that
how are they not competing goods?
I think we're stuck here in our perception of morality. If we're imagining your mom as an imaginary mom, does it matter if she gets stabbed horribly or she has the happiest time of life? It's imaginary.
I'm not. Hold on. I'm not understanding this. Why? If God was like a good being, you're telling me that God couldn't reflect his nature onto the world and have like a rainbow for me to go sit by, or well, it's kind of weird. Like assuming that we could sit like directly under a rainbow, right? In that way, or like some bunnies, right? Or maybe some kitties that I can go play with, right? Those are options and choices for me. I don't see why I have to have the existence of like, something evil in order for me to make that choice. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you're imagining, who cares? Like if if he wants to imagine us, like he'd rather imagine Breaking Bad than watch like kitty rainbows and like in what's it called, in like some, I don't know, like My Little Pony.
So you're saying God has reasons to have the evil?
I think that he would rather imagine things, and we have no real say in that whatsoever. I would say that like what matters more.
We might be going on a tangent here, so maybe we go back to the other thing.
Yeah, I just want to say, Peter, have you experienced suffering in your life ever?
It sucks. Yeah,
it sucks. Okay, so you said, I didn't say this. I just said you said it sucks. Okay, so
yes,
given that you believe that this is all imaginary, right? Whether it's imaginary or not, at the end of the day, you also agree that it sucks, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would rather do this, but I also can't fault God for thinking critically and imagining like bad scenarios as well as good ones, because I can't help it either.
Yeah, but
furthermore, like
the idea of you thinking that all of us not existing will make the suckiness of all the suffering go away. It doesn't go away. At the end of the day, whatever problems you had with God existing and evil existing still remains, because you also acknowledge that the suffering sucks and the suffering continues to exist whether we are part of God's imagination or we're not. So it doesn't solve your problem at all.
Imaginary doesn't matter if you're suffering. It doesn't matter. What matters is if there's meaning.
You saying it doesn't matter and it sucks are contradictory.
Sorry?
You said it sucks. When you say it sucks, it means it matters.
Yes.
Okay, so it does matter.
It doesn't matter. I think it matters because
Armin's pointing out that you're just giving like a performative contradiction. It's like if I went up to Armin and I said, I'm dead. But that's just a performative contradiction, right? I'm like performing the contradiction of that statement, right? I'm dead. Well, I'm alive. I have to be alive in order to say that statement, right? It's like, in order for you to say that it sucks and stuff, it seems to go against the project that you're fighting for here.
All right, Peter. We go ahead. We want to move on very quick, but I just want to tell you to try to think about the fact that you don't really have something to back up the claims you're making, and if what you're saying is wrong, it's a very dangerous ideology that you're promoting here, because if we do exist, then then we do matter, and our suffering matters, our goals matters, our dreams matters, our happiness matters. So you promoting an ideology where none of this is real and none of it matter would be, the consequences of that is very, very high, especially given that if you're wrong, this is our only chance at happiness, and you're just trying to dismiss it as all the way as fake. So it's very important for you to spend time not just thinking about things that could be real, but things that are real based on evidence and arguments that could back it up. Okay?
I don't know if I can make it additional. How would I would like to do some homework. Like, what would I do what would be a good way to develop arguments for that?
Well, if you're talking about arguments, you might want to, if you're talking about, because an argument has a very specific meaning. It's a set of statements that generate a conclusion, right? That doesn't necessarily mean it's a valid one. You can give invalid arguments, but you won't get far with them.
Okay.
But you need to learn like soundness versus validity, right? Soundness being truthfulness of the premises, and then validity being like the formal structure of the argument, and understand how to construct one.
Okay.
Like, for example, like look at what I told you, look at modus ponens. It's MODU at modus. Yeah. USPONENS, modus ponens. Yeah. And modus tollens. You gave me a conditional statement when you called, and it was easy for me to look at that and just go, well, if you're saying if God exists, then we can't exist. Well, someone like me who thinks we exist, I'm like, okay, but I do exist. And so it just falls out for free for me that concept of a God couldn't exist. If it's baked into the concept of God that everybody doesn't exist, well, like all I have to do is just observe my experience, and I'm like, okay, well, that concept can't be true, right? Because I exist, and that just falsifies that claim entirely. And so I would look into that, because all it took for me is just to look at that first premise and then go, well, we do exist, and then take the conclusion out of modus tollens, which is just not P. So I would look into like propositional logic if you want to construct arguments. Otherwise, it's just going to be like rhetoric.
Well, I mean, I would say it in this way. First of all, Peter, you ask such a great question. You're like, okay, I want to go do some homework. Where do I start? Like, I want to congratulate you for that question. That was an amazing question. I was very impressed with you saying that. So a good job, right?
Yeah.
So what I've noticed you do is, so far you just provide claims, and you're saying, well, these could be true, and what you have to understand is that making a claim and providing an argument for it is completely different. Okay, so for something to back it up. Okay. And once you realize that, then you could go on a journey and see what methodologies people use to try to back up their claims, right? And then what those methodologies are, and how could I tell which ones work and which ones don't work, right? Some people say revelation is a good way to come up with truth. Some people say faith is a good way to come up with truth. Some people say rationalism or empiricism are better tools to come up with what is the truth, right? And then the way to figure out, go look at these tools and look at their track record, right? Look which one of them gives you more consistent, less contradictory explanations, that has explanatory power and also has predictive power. There are certain ways for you to realize which methodologies provide you more consistent results that match reality, right? And then I think if you do this homework, you will come and you will realize that empiricism, and then after that rationalism, are better than faith and revelation. And then when you want to use rationalism, then you might understand that going through logical fallacies and understanding how logical fallacies work, that might make you better at doing rationalism. But even better than rationalism, when you go look at empiricism and see how that works and how that produces results, you will notice that the scientific method has been the best tool that we have had to come up with the best conclusions. And that would be our homework, to go study these different methodologies and try to figure out, how do I realize which one of them work and which one of them doesn't work.
Cool. All right. I don't know if I can get through all of that. I got a job and everything, but I'll try to get at least tackle on soundness and validity, so I can at least, like, I feel like we're like hitting each other, like we're both missing each other. But I think I got close. Right. Thank you for taking your time. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said you too on your show.
Thank you.
Have a go. Yeah, have a go on.
Okay.
It's actually what you said there is kind of important in a sense, Armin, is that like This is why I'm skeptical of giving deductive arguments that are external, because he gives that argument, me and you go, well, we do exist, and so that concept of a God just can't be true. If it's dependent on everybody being imaginary, well, that concept's clearly false, right? We can give an argument to show. But he on the other end will go, but no, we're imaginary, and so we get boom, butt heads on the argument. We just, one accepts premise, one doesn't. That, and you had said something about explanatory power. This is why I opt for this kind of view instead. Is to compare the theories. Theories, I don't mean scientific, but compare the worldviews that you have and see which one is just like inflating so much and adding all this unnecessary stuff. And I think that's the best way you're going to do this kind of philosophical endeavor, because you're just always going to find someone who doesn't accept one of your premises in your argument. So that's not to say they're not useful. They can be useful if they're like internal. It's like, hey, you believe A, B, and C? Did you notice D? Oh no, I didn't. I need to go revise my view. Those are very useful. But sometimes you have to just compare the merits of the theory and the virtues, right?
Right, but the issue is that I might be wrong about this, but I think the level that you're at is so high that I'm not sure Peter could make sense of some of the things you're saying, because it's such a higher level of analysis that, I mean, he's like kind of like just starting in to think about these things. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know that he's thinking. I don't know that he's thinking at all, because he doesn't exist. So I don't know if he's thinking at all. I mean, so
right.
There's no brain to be thinking in that view, right? Because he doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, he was doing it. I mean, I think he was doing his. I was
being cheeky to the view, because if he doesn't exist, there's just no thinking going on. So.
Oh yeah, okay. I see. I almost missed that joke. Thank you. All right, but by the way, I'm not trying to say like, oh, JMike is too high level in philosophy for me as well. I'm not trying to like tell you guys that, oh, you're not at JMike's level. I'm not at JMike's level. I don't know many people that are at JMike's level when it comes to philosophical thinking. So
I put myself on a low level there.
All right, let's go to. Oh, I should have. Okay, never mind. Let's go to James. James from Michigan saying there is evidence of God in the book of Numbers. Okay, so this is exciting. Hi, James. Can you hear us?
Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
Yes.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. What do you have for us?
Great. Yeah. I believe, and it's not in the book of Numbers. I believe God is revealed through His numbers. And yeah, my claim is I can prove a God, the name of the God, the date He was born,
okay,
date He died, and
okay,
I could prove.
So let's take.
I could prove it all. That's my claim.
All right, so let's go. Let's go step by step. What do you mean by God?
Okay. Well, I'll just say that I'm 43 years old. A little bit, if I could, share a little bit about me. I've never called in before. Years old.
I mean, I would rather we talk about the claim that you're making, and for us to understand the claim.
Okay.
Do we need to?
Okay.
Like, yeah. If that's okay with you, okay. So you're saying there is evidence for God in the book of Numbers. Before we look for the evidence, we have to see what we're trying to provide evidence for, right? So what do you mean by God?
Evidence for Christ Jesus.
Okay, Jesus Christ. Okay, so Jesus Christ. Do you want to explain further? Like He created us, the universe. Like, is He the creator of the universe? Is it all powerful, all knowing, all loving creator of the universe? Is that what you mean by Jesus, or am I getting this wrong?
Well, you're correct, and I believe.
Okay, I'm good.
I believe the scriptures. Yeah, I believe the scriptures are correct. The Holy Script, the King James Version Bible of the Scriptures, I believe is the Word of God. And Christ, he's embedded in His Word. So yeah.
Okay. So far we got that Jesus is God. By God, you mean the creator of the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving creator of the universe. And we also got the claim that the Bible is His word, is God's word. So these are the claims, and now you're saying that there's evidence for all of this in the book of Numbers. Okay, so now we got the claim. Let's move on to the evidence for where's the evidence for this entity that you just described in the book of Numbers.
Like I said, it's not in the book of Numbers. It's 3 words.
Oh.
Christ, Jesus, Messiah.
Okay.
I
With
got
3
it.
words. Three words. What are the 3 words? Hold on. What are the 3 words doing?
You got a piece of paper and a pencil.
Hold on, James. I just asked a question.
Yeah.
What are you said it's just 3 words. What are the 3 words doing to serve as some type of evidence? I don't get it.
Okay, let me explain. Or 3 words or 3 titles. Let me explain. First word is Christ. Second, Jesus. Third, Messiah. Now, let me explain. If you take in alphabetical order, if you take C with Christ, which would be 3.
Oh man, we're going into what geometry
would be 8. Hey, you can tell what you want. You times it by 7. That's how many verses are in the King James Bible. You times it by 7 days creation. If you get 31,104. My God is powerful, man. I'm telling you.
You think so? Let's just see if we hold on. We don't need to hear we get it. Your God is in us. We all know the song. Okay. We all get it. We all know the awesome God song.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What? Oh my gosh, this is frustrating. Just hold on. What is the inference from there being patterns to God? I don't get it. You see some patterns in your head, and therefore that proves the existence of Jesus.
Yeah, you have to hold our hand and let's move step by step. How do you get from that to all of a sudden Jesus being an entity that has created the entire universe, and it being all powerful, all loving, and all knowing? There's a whole bunch of steps that we missed in between these two. So you need to walk us through.
So far, we're at a book says a thing, and it has patterns. Help us out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm explaining it to you guys. You guys aren't listening. If you go 29 times 6, it's going to fill up the whole board. Christ, Jesus, Messiah.
What board?
You take C. Because you won't even let me explain it. You guys are talking about book of Numbers. I'm not even talking about the book of Numbers. I'm talking about his name, Christ.
You mentioned it.
You take C3. Right. Would you just hear me out, though?
All I asked, James, was what board? You're saying terms, and I don't know what the referent of it is. Fuck me for asking you a clarificatory question, right? I mean, just all I asked you was what that was.
James, let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. Okay, James, let me see. Let me so I listen. I try to listen to what you're saying. Let me describe what you're saying, and you could tell me if I'm understanding you correctly. Okay, you're saying that there is some patterns within the Bible, within these names that you mentioned, okay, or within the Bible or whatever, and it's very amazing, like it's extraordinary, it's very strange that you find, like, if you multiply these numbers, then you get a number that it seems very odd that you get that number, and that somehow proves that Jesus is God, right? Because of these patterns that you're noticing. If you multiply these numbers together, the patterns that you're noticing proves that Jesus is God. Is that what you're saying, or did I misunderstood you?
Would be well, not 100%, but would be overwhelming. Yeah, overwhelming.
Okay.
Because that. Okay, yeah, so I would say.
Let me try to give you an example. So, and you tell me what you think about this. Okay, just to see if I understand your argument. So, within the Quran, right, we find similar patterns that many Muslims show that proves that Quran is the word of God and Allah is God, right? There are many examples of similar patterns that you could find in the Quran, right? What do you think about that argument that Muslims make?
I would agree. There probably is patterns. I would agree.
Okay, would that make the Quran the word of
Praise
God?
Allah.
The patterns are no.
Mm.
So give the
I would agree with you
give
guys,
the
patterns and everything.
give the symmetry breaker, right? Break the
Patterns and all-
symmetry between those two things, right? So Armin gave you a
Okay.
symmetry between these claims, right? So now we need a symmetry breaker.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so far you should be praising Allah right now. All right, help us out. And honestly, there's no reason for us to even be this charitable at all.
I'm not-
So
Well,
relax.
I'm not really good at debating, you know. Yeah, well, I'm not very good at debating, just, you know, first off. But,
That's okay.
Yeah. Well,
It's fine. We can take it down.
Yeah, I'll just
It's okay.
Okay. All right, like I said, it's just 3 words: Christ, Jesus, Messiah. You substitute the letters and the numbers.
We got that part.
Each you'll get 2. But let me tell you something. You add each numbers individually. That's going to give you the smaller number. For instance,
No.
Christ is 41.
James, that's like
And then
we
you
need you
add-
to answer our question.
No, you're not letting
James.
Wait.
No, because we got the gist of it. The gist of it is that there are very amazing patterns within the Bible that proves Jesus is God, right? We got the gist of it, and you could give us more example. Let's assume that all of that is true. Now we move to the next part. Okay, so we don't need for you to give us more. Given that we understood what you're saying, we don't need to delve into that even more. We could go to the next step. We told you that there are patterns within the Quran that are also very strange and very interesting to look into. And you said that you agree that there are patterns within the Quran. And then I said, well, does that prove Allah is God? Yes or no? Does that prove Allah is God and that the Quran is the word of God? Yes or no?
Well, I don't know what patterns are there. I'd have to look at the patterns. What are they?
But you just said there. If there are patterns, okay. So, for example, Muslims tell us that if you look at the number of the mentioned number of days and night in the Quran, they are equal, and they both equal 365 numbers. So, in the Quran, the day is mentioned 365 times, and night is also mentioned 365 times. And they say that that's very extraordinary for that to happen, given that the Quran was revealed during a period of time. There are many examples like that Muslims give us, right? So there are endless number of patterns that they mention to us. If those patterns do exist in the Quran, does that mean that the Quran is the word of God?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay,
Like
so
I
good.
said.
So you're saying not that. So how come you said not necessarily no? Okay, I agree with you. Good answer. So how come the patterns within the Quran doesn't prove that the Quran is the word of God, but the patterns that exist within the Bible proves that the Bible is the word of Jesus and Jesus is God? What is the double standard here?
Okay, I'll answer that. And the pattern is not in the Bible. The pattern is like I said, it's in the 3 names because it references all. No, I'm talking about my pattern. I'm talking about.
Does it only work?
It only works
in English.
I'm talking. Yeah, yes. It only works in English, and it's 3 words: Christ, Jesus, Messiah.
Wait, okay, but that's not Jesus's name, right?
Excuse me.
Right? That's not Jesus. You think that people went around? You think like Matthew sitting at a tax booth? He's like, "What's up, Jesus?" You think that's how it went?
Yeah, so the original.
So we didn't. So like, had English never been developed, this prophecy would have just, would have never come to fruition.
Exactly. You're right. You're right. Exactly. That's the power of God. That's the power of God. Map to God.
I'm done. Armin.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm done.
You're done.
I'm done. I think we can make more fruitful productions.
Okay, James. What JMike is referring to is that the Bible was in Aramaic, it was in Hebrew, it was in Greek, it was like not in English for many years. So it's odd that for this to work out, we have to use the English language. So that's what JMike is referring to. But anyways,
and like I said.
And by the way, think of all the religions we won't know are true until we come up with like new languages to go. Right? Oh, if we hadn't come up with that language, we would never know the truth of swaboogly doogly. Like, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
James,
What's the most
before we
spoken
move
language?
on,
Hold
just
on.
think, James,
What's the most spoken? Hold on. What's the most spoken language on earth? What is the most spoken language on earth? English.
Don't
so
you
if you
think?
if
Oh
there's
my
a God,
James,
maybe when they put it in English, use your like it's common sense, dude. Master God, y'all can check me out. These guys aren't letting me talk. Christ, Jesus, Messiah. You could build them. Anybody could write out the Master God. Proves the Bible verses. How many? The middle chapters. Psalm 118 and 41:77. It's 41:77 right there.
I'm gonna move on. I just think it's very because I'm trying to for JMike's sanity's sake. I'm gonna move on. I'm sorry. All right, so if you're listening to us, just think about the idea of how unfair that would be to non-English speaking people around the world. That God is providing the evidence for his existence only in English and not to the vast majority of the people in the world who don't speak English. And also consider that throughout history, English becoming this common is quite recent. Think about all the Arabs that could have become Christian if they had access to this information that you're having, but God decided not to provide English as an optional language for them. There's a lot of I don't know. I could spend like 2 hours talking about the problems within. I don't know if he was even listening to what we were saying. Jimmy, do you think like it's not worth?
That was probably my favorite moment on Atheist Experience history. Probably my favorite moment. Okay. Probably my favorite moment of all time.
I shouldn't have dropped it then.
I was totally ready. Totally ready to move on. You're Armin. You hit 2 nails on the head, so we're good to go, man. We're totally good to go. We're trucking along. We're moving full speed.
I didn't want to drop that call. I wanted to go on, but I thought that you were. I thought like I should. People are gonna get tired. Sorry.
Call back. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to. Oh wait, I should do some other.
Yeah, get some announcements. Yeah. Get some announcements.
Yes. Okay. All right. So guys, you should support the ACA. No, if you can afford it, right? If you like what we do and would like to support us, here are some other ways to support the Atheist Experience, and the ACA. Become a channel member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. This will give you access to special chat emojis. And also available on atheist-community.org are printable call-in flyers. Oh yeah, that's a good thing. That I used to misunderstand what this is about. Now I get it, and it's genius. You could go print these out, and you could go put them in different places, but just make sure that you have the permission to do it. Don't litter. Okay, make sure that it's okay for people. Like, we don't want you to people to get annoyed with atheists more than they already are, and so go print these out, cut them, and then if you have permission, put it in places where people might see it and call in the show. We need more callers, so please do that. That's an amazing way, a free way for you to support the show. Anyways, so let's move on to Robert. Let's bring Robert up. Okay, hi, Robert.
Hello. Hi, Armin. How are you?
Good.
I had a question about...
How are you?
But first,
yes, go on.
I needed to inform you of something. Do you remember last week on the show, this one caller complained that there was no evidence for the existence of Alexander the Great?
Oh, yeah, I remember. I was going to say, no, I don't remember that because, but I do remember it, yes. It wasn't last week. It was way before.
I'm sorry, what?
It wasn't last week, but it was like, yes, we're there. Can you hear us?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Robert?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it was about 2 weeks ago.
Yes. Okay.
But do you remember the incident? Do you remember,
yes, I do.
Remember the event I'm talking about?
Yes, but let's get through this very fast because I'm interested in what you called about. So go on, Robert.
Yeah, it's just something I wanted to let you know because this theist caller said there's no evidence for Alexander the Great. This is after you mentioned, there's no evidence for Jesus. Well, the caller was lying because we have plenty of archaeological evidence. We have the Shrine of the Bark at Luxor, which is in Egypt, which mentions Alexander by name, and we have a Greek, a Mesopotamian tablet, which also mentions him by name. And I wanted you to know.
Yes, I think we addressed that. By the way, I just want to clarify. I didn't say there's no evidence for Jesus. That was my co-host. We had slightly different arguments for it. But let's move on. Let's move into what you said in your question. I have a question about the Quran. But go on. What's the question about the Quran?
Okay, let's go to the Quran. All right.
Okay.
Let me just make an introductory sentence because the Quran is about a 7th century work. Now, comparing that the language, like the English of the 7th century, is nothing like the English now. To understand it, you have to take courses and everything like that. The language has changed so radically. My question is, has the Arabic, the 7th century Arabic, in which the Quran is written in, has that changed considerably over the 1,000 or so years?
It has changed, but not that radically, right? So,
if you something like with the dots or something. Sorry to interrupt. I just was reading.
Oh
something
yeah,
about
actually,
this. Yeah, I was just reading.
Actually, if you go that far back, then yeah, it has changed. Depends on how far back you want to go, right? Because if you want to go to the Arabic language, yeah, go on.
I'm talking about the 6th century when the Quran was ostensibly written.
Okay, so this whole idea of the Quran being written when Muslim narratives claims they are written, that's being questioned. It seems like it was much more like a longer period of time that is even pre-Islamic, right? So the Quran is like a much more the evolution of the Quran is a lot more complicated than what Muslim narratives say, right? So it seemed like it came from other languages. The early Arabic languages were closer, like an offshoot of Syriac, but I'm not going to go into the details. But if you see, here's the thing: just like evolution of living beings, it's hard for you to put a line exactly on where the Arabic starts and when the other languages that the Arabic came from ends, right? So it's not like a black and white line that you could say like, okay, Arabic starts here. So for you to say how has it changed a lot depends on how far back you go, because if you go back, any language, the evolution of any language, if you keep going back, at some point you don't recognize it as the language that we call it Arabic today. But is it if it changed that much, is it by definition still Arabic, or is it Proto-Arabic, or is it early Arabic, or is it the late stages of Syriac? Like, so it's hard for you to, depends on how you define Arabic. But yeah, Arabic
it reminds me of like the when is you take a grain from a sand, like when is it no longer a heap? Like when do you draw that kind of line, sort of thing.
Yes. But so early Arabic did not like JMike mentioned, very early Arabic didn't even have the signs that you have for the dialectic marks and the dots, right? So it would be unreadable for an Arab-speaking person today because they could not tell the difference between a letter that makes the b sound or the letter that makes the t sound, or z sound versus the re sound. So it would be almost impossible to read. So it has changed that much. But to be fair to Muslims, eventually when Arabic was developed as a more a language that was used more commonly, it hasn't. Arab-speaking people right now, they have an easier time reading the Quran after the dots and the dialectic marks were added. They have an easier time figuring out how to read the Quran than English-speaking people required to understand Shakespeare. It's still difficult because the Arabic in the Quran is still different from the Arabic that is spoken today, but you wouldn't need as much training as an English person requires today to be able to read Shakespeare. So the difference is less. Does that answer your question?
16th century. Which is 1,000 years later. Let me ask the question in a different way. And you've partially answered. Your average Muslim is basically reading a modernized version of the Quran. Is that correct?
Well, depends on how you define modernized, because the dots and the dialectic marks were added very early on in the Islamic history. So technically, it's pretty close. There are some very small differences where a lot of Muslims would deny, but there are some small differences. But overall, it has stayed pretty much the same since the late Umayyad dynasty, since like early on in the Islamic history till now. It hasn't changed that much. It has changed a little and not that much. I also have to add that most Muslims don't speak Arabic at all. So when you say Muslims, you're talking about 20% of the Muslim population who speak Arabic, because the vast majority of Muslims are not Arabs.
Okay, so, but the Quran, the language it's written in, isn't that called Arabic?
Yes.
Okay, so I did use the right term there. Now, but and by the way, Shakespeare is more the modern English period. Let me correct you there.
Beowulf say anything about
is Old English.
Okay.
Beowulf is Old English.
Okay.
For example,
I didn't make a claim about Shakespeare. Or,
yeah. Those to understand that. Of course, Beowulf is written in an unusual dialect. You have to go to school and you have to learn a foreign language. Shakespeare you can pick up. Some of it's a little strange, but a modern English speaker could. But now let me ask you, with a modern, let's say you have a modern Muslim, when he hears a passage in the Quran, he can immediately understand it. Let's say he's not very well schooled, but he goes to his house of worship and he hears a modern, and he hears somebody reading from the Quran. Will he understand it?
Well, like I said, most Muslims are not Arab speakers. You're talking about Arab Muslims? So most Muslims would not understand.
Okay, so
most Muslims will have no clue. The vast majority of Muslims, if you read them the Quran, they would need a translation in their language.
That's what I thought. That's what I'm getting at. Now, my next question, just based on your answer, is what are most modern Muslims read? What do most modern Muslims read or listen to when they hear the Quran? Isn't it a modernized version?
Okay, okay, so Muslims listen to the Quran for different reasons. If you just listen to the Arabic, it's not necessarily for you to understand what it's saying. It's a good thing to do. Just listening to the Quran, reciting the Quran gives you brownie points with Allah, even if you have no clue what the words are saying. So that's why a lot of times the Muslims will listen to the Arabic words or read the Arabic words without understanding it. But if you want to actually understand it, the vast majority of the Muslims have to read the translation. So the translation of the Quran, yes, it's a modern thing, because in the vast majority of the history of Islam, the Quran was not translated into different languages. The access to the translation, being this prevalent, it's a modern thing. So Muslims speak Urdu, they speak Persian, they speak Malay. These are the languages that are common among Muslims. Arabic is just 20%. It is one of the big ones up there, but it's not the majority. So when Muslims want to understand the Quran, they just read the translation. The vast majority of them will just read the translation of the Quran in their own.
That's what I had thought. That they're reading. Okay, because the original language is Arabic. Now, here's my question: is this? Is there just one modernized Arabic translation, or are there a number of them floating around?
Oh, there's many. Like, for example, my mother tongue is Persian. I grew up in Iran, right? So when we read the Quran, we don't understand the Arabic of the Quran. As Iranian Muslims, we wouldn't understand the Quran. We had to read the Persian translation. There are competing translators. There are many Persian translators, and they're competing with each other. So we have access, and sometimes they are quite different. The translations are quite different in their meaning.
That's my whole point. Yes, they can be quite different. We have the same problems in English. When things like, for example, in Old English get translated into modern English, they're quite different. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Okay,
yes, I think so.
That's all I really asked. Because I like to study the languages that the books are written in. And that tells you a lot about the book, doesn't it?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. I host a Persian show for Iranian people and people from Tajikistan and Afghanistan and anyone else who speaks Persian. What we do is when we are like, this is an atheist channel for Persian speaking people. And when we are studying the Quran, we have all the translations next to each other, and we look at all the translations in Persian. And it's interesting how some of the translations are biased towards their ideology, and like their translation reflects their bias, and some other translations reflect their bias. So that's something that we commonly have to deal with ex-Muslim, Persian-speaking ex-Muslims when we're analyzing and dissecting the Quran.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay.
And I understand that perfectly. I just simply wanted to ask you, I didn't realize that you spoke Farsi. Because we have a number of words from the Farsi language. Did you know that in English?
We do. Okay. Yes. Like star, like officer, like train, like divine. Yes, I know that. But anyways, we need to. Do you have any? Well, it's Indo-European, which is basically the same root. It has the same root of Persian. But anyways, I don't want to get into this much detail because I think we might lose people. But anyways, do you have any other final messages before we go to the next caller, Robert?
That's it. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much, Robert. Thank you. All right. So, I think I should do some more announcement. Do you have any, is it JMike, do you think like there were, what I said, there are some similarities between what I said about the Quran and the way Bible is, like the deal, you guys have to deal with different translations, and sometimes it seems like there's some agenda in the way the Bible is translated. Is that the same thing with, Christianity?
Well, there's clearly agenda in terms of the difference in manuscripts from scribes, where scribes would want to, or someone would want to stress a theological point or take out that Jesus felt angered, right? We can use these kind of things to, well, did the scribe change it to Jesus being angry, or did he take that away? And there's a really good rules of thumb to indicate what's more probable than not. But yeah, I mean, in the translations, I don't know. That's really not something I've looked at as closely, but definitely just in your source material here. Well, source material, there's definitely, right. I mean, John Stuart Mill in like the 1700s had like 100 manuscripts, and he took like 100 of them and found 30,000 different variants that he thought were cat butt in the face, that he thought weren't just minor, but actually pretty major changes. And it's funny because his retractors would say, well, look, he's trying to render the gospels uncertain. And, his supporters were like, well, no, like he didn't create, these variants. He just noticed that they were there. So. Right.
So what we notice in the translations of the Quran, both Persian and English, is the more modern they are, the less they try to whitewash how violent the Quran is, right? So, for example, you see in the more recent modern translation, when the Quran tells you that you have to beat your wife, it puts in brackets lightly. Like it's not in the original text, but in the translation, it adds lightly to the translation, even though it's not in the Word of God. So we don't see that in the earlier translations, but in more modern translation, you could see the constant attempt to make the Quran seem less evil.
I've seen that. I think it even says that in my clear Quran. I think it has it in brackets, like lightly with like something like a hairbrush or something like that, right? It's like, and I've had some crazy conversations with people where they're like, yeah, but it's something light. I'm like, okay, so I was correct that it advocates hitting women, right? So I wasn't. So when from the outset, I was correct, right? And you get into that whole thing, but so.
All right, so let me make some announcements. We now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. Okay, so you can see that on the screen. And also there you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk, Heathen, Truth Wanted, the nonprofits, and others on one channel. audio podcasts are great. You could listen to them while doing, you're exercising, you're running, or you're walking the dogs, or exercising and listening to audio is my favorite thing to do. You're doing two things at the same time. All right, so let me go take the next call from Roger from UK. The question is, why isn't the Kalam taken more seriously? Hi, Roger. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so go on. What do you have for us?
I'm assuming I could be heard.
Yes, you can.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to sort of ask a question. My questions are anchored to the book that you wrote, actually. I guess I did my homework. So there are three objections that I kind of want to give to your critique of the cosmological argument. We could just start with one, and then if you're interested, you could hear the others. But so in your book, you say that even if we were to accept that the universe required some sort of prime mover or originating force, there is no evidence to suggest that this force must conform to any of the traits generally attributed to a god. If there is indeed a creator, there's no reason why that creator should necessarily be intelligent or have any sort of consciousness at all. And so I guess my question in reply to that, so it's like an objection in the form of a question, is something like this. So it seems like your statement suggests that there's no evidence to suggest that a prime mover, if it exists, must conform to the traits generally attributed to a god. However, proponents like Craig argue that there are strong deductive reasons, right? So for supporting the idea that the creator must possess like certain properties and whatnot, such as intelligence and consciousness. So considering the deductive reasoning presented in their arguments, do you maintain that there's truly no evidence? Or could it be more accurate to characterize the evidence as just unconvincing or subject to interpretation, which is just like true with most arguments? So how do you differentiate between genuinely lacking evidence, for instance, like a square circle, and like we have no evidence for a square circle, and evidence that may be contested or open to varying degrees of persuasiveness, such as the deductive reasons put forth by proponents of the Kalam?
Okay, I mean, it's just the way that we use words. Sometimes people by no evidence mean that the evidence that is presented is no good, right? So if I say that, I don't know, I have evidence that you are the murderer, and then you show me the evidence and it's not really good evidence that I am the murderer, I could come and say, there was no evidence. And somebody will like, no, there was evidence. It was just bad evidence. Okay, I mean, that's just different ways of using language. So sometimes people refer to bad evidence as no evidence. I mean, if you're more comfortable with calling bad evidence just bad evidence, or bad arguments just bad arguments, I will just go with that. It's just a different way of using language. I mean, do you agree with that, JMike? I mean, you're better at this.
Well, I appreciate the clarification in the sense that, because I'm not someone that's going to be like, when someone's like, there's no evidence for God, I'm usually somebody trying to talk to them and say, look, the nature of evidence and how we discuss things, when you say that, it sounds like a very emotional thing. You might, maybe you mean something like there's not good evidence or it's bad evidence or something. But yeah, I'm in agreement that if your language is just used in that context, I think that's fine. I mean, there's a distinction in being like, there's no evidence, the kind of like angry person online versus someone's like, look, yeah, there's evidence. There's evidence that when I have good Mondays, consecutively, that's evidence for good Monday fairies, but that sounds, depending, it might be ad hoc or whatever, right? You might have to look at everything in context, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people understand when I say there's no good evidence for, I don't know, Armin being the murderer. That means, I mean, there's no evidence for Armin being the murderer. They understand that I mean there's no good evidence because there's if technically there's evidence for everything then if you don't use the way I am using language. But if you're more comfortable with your way, I'll just use your way.
You could say there's evidence for the fact that Bigfoot exists, right? But you just say, look, I don't think that there's good evidence for.
I mean, anything. I mean, if we're calling bad evidence, then technically there's evidence for everything. Everything that doesn't exist, there's technically evidence for.
Everything has an underdetermination issue in a sense. That's why you want to make like novel predictions in your theory and try to like at least. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm talking over Roger. So
yeah,
Roger, I actually I really appreciate your question, by the way.
Yeah. It's
sure,
more about the use of language.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So in reply to the question that I asked, it seemed as though you suggested, okay, when I say no evidence, really what I mean is bad evidence, and that this is just sort of a linguistic mishap. I suppose then the question then becomes this. I mean, so if you misspoke in that one quote, and it's just a question then of contesting the evidence, then I guess you're admitting that you were mistaken in the passage and that it's not the case that there's no evidence, and that if you were mistaken in the passage that there's no evidence, then it just reduces to a question, if I'm not wrong, about the quality and nature of the evidence, which is then again true of almost every argument, right? I mean, if we're going to be talking about moral realism versus moral anti-realism, mereological nihilism versus mereological universalism, libertarianism versus, for instance, Rawlsian principles. I mean, all of that is going to vary upon how people persuade the evidence. So if anything, that point just kind of reduces to a trivial point, would it not, about the fact that you find the evidence unpersuasive and other people do? So, I mean, it's unclear to me, because so in the first instance, it seems like you conceded that it's not true that there's no evidence, that you just meant bad evidence.
I didn't say I made a mistake. I just talked about different uses of language. I say some people refer to no bad evidence as no evidence. I think that's fair to talk like that. I just gave you an example.
Do you think those people are wrong?
To talk like. No. I'm saying it's common. No, I don't think they're wrong. I think it's fair for somebody to say, like, I give you an example for this reason. I said, like, if you accuse me of being a murderer and you show me the evidence and it's bad evidence, a lot of people would say that there's no evidence that Armin is a murderer. And I think a lot of people understand that that's a common way of using language, and people understand that. Like, I don't see why we're being so picky. If you prefer saying there's no good evidence, okay, use that. I don't think that. I think we're being overly picky about how we use words here. As long as we understand what we're talking about, we can move forward.
Okay, sure. So because I think it's one thing to say that there's no evidence in the same sense that there's no evidence of a married bachelor or of a square circle, and then to say, for instance, there's no evidence in favor of, I don't know, the fact that maybe like OJ is innocent or something like that. Like, those seem like fundamentally different claims. So I think that clarifying.
Can you give me an example of anything? Can you give me an example of anything that has no evidence?
A square circle.
A square circle. I mean, I have bad evidence for it. I dreamt of a.
Well, what if you're circle. Roger? What if you're a dialetheist?
Well, a square circle, it's not even clear that the concept. I'm sorry.
Okay, I had a dream. I had a dream where I had tea with a square circle. There's my evidence.
Yeah. So I guess the response to this is that it's not even clear that what it's describing. What a square circle is describing is a coherent concept.
So it's bad. So what I said is bad.
It's not even clear that there can be an image of it. What?
Yeah, I know. But so it's bad. So it's bad, basically. My evidence is bad. It's not good evidence.
Sure. I think that what's more accurate to say is that there couldn't be evidence of it. It's not possible for there to be evidence of a square circle, in the same way that there can't possibly be evidence of things that are logically contradictory, which is contrasted.
Okay, but the same, because it makes no logical, because my evidence makes no logical sense. So that's what when you say bad evidence for other things, I'm saying that based on your own standard, I could say that they are not evidence at all because they make no logical sense at all as well. So you're saying what you describe is not just bad evidence; it's no evidence because it's logically inconsistent. Therefore, based on this standard, I could say, well, they have no evidence as well.
Sure. Okay. So I think that my point has been made, and I think that there was quite conciliatory towards it. So maybe we should move on to the second point. So the second point is sort of the redefinition point that you bring up in your passage in the book. So you say, even if the cosmological argument were to be true in the sense of a prime mover, that claim does nothing whatsoever to prove the existence of a deity, unless the definition of deity is confined purely to mean forces that created the universe. My apologies. If that were the case, you could just as easily call electricity, gravity, or the strong nuclear force a god. The general definition of a god among religious people demands consciousness and intelligence, and then you go on to say some other stuff, but I'm just going to focus on that part. So, with respect to that, I could offer the following question. So your statement suggests that even if the cosmological argument were true in the sense of a prime mover, it does not necessarily prove the existence of a deity unless the definition of deity is confined purely to mean forces that create the universe. Okay. However, if we consider the attributes of the creator established by the Kalam cosmological argument, spaceless, timeless, supremely powerful, and personal, wouldn't making deity coextensive with, scare quotes, that force that created the universe, lead to the conclusion that, according to the Kalam, that force is indeed a god?
No, because look,
even if it's labeled as a redefinition.
Are you familiar with Alyssa Ney's work?
What'd you say?
Are you familiar with Alyssa Ney's work?
The something Ney's work? Sorry, you're
Alyssa Ney.
Alyssa Ney? Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you're familiar with like the quantum wave function thing that she postulates, or that she puts forth, I'll say?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and there's like atheistic conceptions of Thomism. Wouldn't that be compatible?
Mm-hmm. Compatible with what? With whatever you're going with the prime mover. But I'm saying when you're talking about Craig's attributes that you get there, I mean, it doesn't really get there. You could actually say something like it pre-exists like metric time and exists in some like amorphous time or something, right? Like I don't think Craig really gets there, but I think you're wanting to talk with Armin on this. I'm kind of like, I have my own issues with the timeless, spaceless stuff. And I think like there's concepts like fine.
Yes, but I think you're gearing this towards Armin, so maybe I am stepping over something. I don't know.
If you're claiming that this whole argument actually shows like the characteristics of God that we see in, I don't know, in the Bible and the Quran, well, just tell me how it does that.
Well, no. What I'm saying is that I don't think your critiques work.
Okay, well, tell me how.
Well, yeah. So I'm telling you how. So if we keep kind of going. So even if it's labeled as a redefinition, I guess the question is, how would you respond to the assertion that the argument, as presented in the Kalam, inherently establishes the nature, or it purports to, of that force as like having those divine attributes, challenging the notion that it's a form of it would just.
Well, that's a claim. I need to see how, right?
Right.
You need to tell me how it does that.
Yeah, sure. The way in which it does it is that it goes through, so, there are kind of two stages of the Kalam, right? So there's the existence stage where it says that, okay, some cause of the universe exists, and then you could go through the various arguments that are offered in favor of defense of those premises. And then the second stage of the Kalam is going to provide some divine attributes, right, to those. And in order to contest whether...
wait a minute. Wouldn't that be past Kalam? Wouldn't that be something that you add now on top of it?
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Because Kalam gets you only so far, but now you're going to the second phase that is outside of Kalam.
Yeah, so I prepared for this. So this is kind of... Yeah, so there's this critique that's offered... so Dill Hunty does this as well. So the thing is that on this very point, with respect to the Kalam, it's most presentations of the Kalam, right? So for instance, you get like Craig's 1999 presentation and the Erasmus 2018 presentation. They do mention a creator. Okay. So even if
I'm waiting for an
if
argument. I mean, I'm waiting for you to just tell me, like you keep talking about other people's argument. What about your argument? Okay, you, Roger, you tell me what
yeah,
within the Kalam argument gives you all the characteristics that we see from the gods that most people, see, the definition that we see people use when they use the word God. God
sure.
comes with a whole bunch, with a lot of baggage, right? So where do you see all of those characteristics within the Kalam? Where do you get that from Kalam?
Where do you get that from the Kalam with all the divine attributes? So all the divine attributes, so this is the second stage of the Kalam, whereby you tease out the properties that are required in order for
That is not the
whatever.
That is not the
caused
second stage of Kalam. That's past Kalam. JMike, am I wrong about this? This is past Kalam. This is not
the second
stage of Kalam.
This is the second stage.
There's Kalam
It's widely considered to be the second stage.
Yeah, there's stage 1 and stage 2 style Kalam arguments, and so they'll go to stage 2 there. My criticism is more on the Craig stuff. I think I don't want to like step in over your guys' call because I think he's trying to criticize a view that you take on it. So I don't know that my opinion on this, my view on the Craig stuff might be separate because I don't know. Roger, it seems like you're trying to specifically attack a criticism that he has, right? Not like just general criticisms that you could lay towards first stage or second stage Kalam arguments. You're more specifically worried about his criticisms. I just want to see if that's what the point of your concern is.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have my views, but I don't know that I don't know that's what Roger wants to hear because I think he's trying to.
I mean, I mean, obviously, I'm interested in what both of you have to say. So,
just show me where in Kalam it provides you the proof that this prime mover thing is all knowing. Just like, can you just give me make the argument? Show me the argument. All knowing. Give me all knowing from Kalam.
Yeah, the Kalam doesn't seek to show that God's all knowing, or that the Creator is all knowing.
Well, then that's my point. That's my point. I'm saying you cannot get that's part of the definition of God. When people say God, when Muslims say God, when Christians say God, when Jews say God, when Hindus say God, there are some characteristics of God, okay, that we don't get from Kalam. You're saying we do. Now you just admitted that we don't.
No,
if you don't get
thing,
yeah,
right?
go on.
Okay. So here's the thing. Even if you don't get, let's say, omniscience, right? Let's grant that. Okay. What the proponent of the Kalam is going to say is, look, I still have an argument that gets timeless, spaceless, immaterial, supremely powerful, personal Creator with libertarian free will. If the only critique of the argument is, well, we don't get omniscience, it would be a very strange form of atheism that conceded to an argument, the conclusion of which is there's a Creator that has those attributes.
The word creator needs personhood. Okay, if you want to say something caused everything, that is not what I understand theism to be. Okay, I could give you that. Like, oh my, there's something that is not made. There's a cause behind existence. Okay, I don't care right now if that's true or not, but let's say it is. If that's your theism, okay, then that's not the theism I know, right? I need some personhood. I need some identity. I need something that could think, that could feel, that could get angry, that could judge, right? But if you say that, but I'm saying if I even concede that the Kalam argument is correct, I don't think that gets you theism. I think if that is theism, then Spinoza's God will also give you theism. If I call my cat a god, and that will also give you theism. If I call mathematics, if I call that God, that will also give you theism. If I call love, if I say love is God, then that would also be a theism. That's not what people mean when they say God. Do you understand that that's not what people mean? That's not what religious people mean when they say God?
Yeah. So I understand that point, and I fully take stock of it. I think though that what this is though is that it's significantly weaken against the Kalam, because it's not saying something like, this critique is not like the argument is ineffective. This argument is that, well, it proves deism. But if you want to say that the argument proves deism, then you're conceding to deism.
No, it doesn't prove deism. It doesn't prove deism at all. I mean, if I'm conceding to you calling things that might exist God, okay? I'm conceding you calling your cat a God and saying I believe in God, therefore I'm a God believer. I concede to that. Okay, if that's what you mean by God, then God is real. If you want to change the meaning of words and call yourself a theist and say therefore God is real, that's what I'm conceding to. That's the only thing I'm conceding to. Yeah, I will concede to that. Okay, if you want to call random things that we already have words for a God and just call yourself a God believer, I will concede to that. Okay, there's a God. There you go.
Okay, so just on that point, it's unclear where in the course of either the argument or my responses to your responses where I'm redefining the concept of a God. If anything, it's strictly limited to and tethered to the traditional classical conceptions of what a God constitutes and their divine attributes.
What is a God? What is a God?
What's a God? Traditionally conceived, the classical theistic God is an omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipotent creator with freedom of the will, who's personal, and that's who creates the universe.
You get none of that from Kalam. You get none of that from Kalam. You get none of that from Kalam. Based on your own definition.
I mean, the Kalam. Well, the conclusion of the Kalam is that there's a supremely powerful creator of the universe who's personal with freedom of the will, who's spaceless.
No, it doesn't. So it doesn't prove personhood. It doesn't prove personhood. It doesn't prove will. It doesn't prove any of that.
Oh, okay. Well, if you look at the entailment stage of the Kalam, so this is available in published works going back to 1979. You know, if you look at
let's move back. Let's just make this simple. Okay, in your definition of God, you had all-knowing. Okay, again, I go back to the very simple question at the very beginning. Show me how Kalam shows that the prime mover, right, is all-knowing. Show me that. Your definition include, not mine. Your definition of God included all-knowing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I have to move on. Because we have a CS call.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I'll conclude with maybe a suggestion and then just a methodological point. So one suggestion is if you think that God had, you think that there's no best.
You're not good. No. Wait a minute. Answer my question. You're just going to ignore my question. Show me where Kalam shows that God is all-knowing. That the prime mover, is all-knowing.
Yeah, sure. So the Kalam. Okay, I'll make the stronger point. The Kalam doesn't really need to do that. All it needs to show is that there's a supreme creator of the universe that's maximally great and omnipotent and personal and has a freedom will. If it could. All
right, I'm done. That's my entire point. Okay, you define God, included all-knowing. I said if with Kalam you don't get to God as defined by you, and you just said that it doesn't do that. There you go. You just said it does something else. It does something else, which is not proving God. Whatever that thing is, because it doesn't get to the definition that you provided for God, therefore it does not prove God. Even if it was successful at what it does, which is not, even if it was, it doesn't get us to God. So you just, based on your definition. Thank you, Roger. All right.
Sorry, since that was personal on he read your book and wanted to talk to and all that, I figured I'd try to leave it there. Right. Plus, I reject the first premise of the Kalam, so I don't usually entertain past that, just in the sense that it is actually my view kind of instructs me to reject the first premise. So we would have a different conversation. I didn't want to go from it, granting it for the sake of the argument, and then you guys exploring that, and then going, well, hold on, I reject the first premise. I'm back over here. Hi. I think of an initial state that necessarily exists, that's natural, and so it begins to exist but doesn't have a cause. So I think the first premise is false. So hi, we can talk about that. So I hopefully apologies, for not
But do you see my point? Like, even if it, so you don't want to entertain that, even if it did.
I try to be specific, because like Proust, and there's like the new Kalam, it's championed by like guys like Alexander Proust, and there's the older Kalam, it's championed by people like William Lane Craig. I want to try to be very specific, like which Kalam we going with, and then I can grant it for those things. I mean, I think people. Like Joe Schmidt has pointed out pretty well, that you don't get what Craig thinks you get at the end of it. And I think that people like Alyssa Nay's view are interesting to throw in the mix there, or some types of like Thomistic atheism. I think there's a couple people that might champion that. I'm not too sure, but I think, I mean, it's going to depend on what the conclusion of their argument is going to be there. But if they're just trying to get to, look, there's this timeless, spaceless thing, I'm not even convinced that's the case for the reasons I gave. I think you could have something that pre-exists metric time, but not. Anyway, I don't know if I should get in the rabbit hole there. So yeah.
All right.
I have a different style on the Kalam of attacking, I guess, is my route.
We have a theist, Yeshua. So I'm really excited when we have today was a good day. We got a lot of theists. Hi, Yeshua from England, talking about consciousness proving God.
Hey.
Hello. Hi.
So
go ahead.
Guys, then, are you materialists?
Yes, I'm agnostic on philosophy of mind, but I can take the role of an identity theorist, I guess.
Okay, you have to make this quick because we're running out of time. So tell us what you're thinking.
Okay, I think the universe only exists in the mind of God.
Oh, this is
okay. Why?
All right. So why? Yes.
Well, okay. What is the substance of the universe made from?
Well, that's not a question. Asking me a question is not supporting your view. Have you ever debated before?
What do you mean by God first? Yeah. What do you mean by God?
Hold on. Support what you said. Don't ask me a question. I fucking hate when people do that. I really do. Support it. Don't ask me. What I know and what I don't know won't support your argument.
Yeah, let's do step by step.
Okay. Merely asking you a question. You could be physicalists. I don't know. Okay. Well, the material of the universe it doesn't actually tell us that it's made of any substance. It only tells us when we look at it how it behaves, a phenomenon. But when it comes down to it, things like atoms aren't actually made from anything. They just break down into forces. It becomes nothing other than an abstract description, a mathematical abstract description.
What?
Which
you're saying? Wait. Hold on. Wait. So you're saying like quarks don't exist? They're actually just abstracta. They're just abstract objects that exist in some like Platonic. What are you even saying?
We're getting off track from the claim here.
Hold on, Armin. Let me go through with this. You had the whole last call. Let me get with this guy real quick.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
So what please make this coherent to me, please.
Okay. The physical substance that matter is made from comes down to a description which is abstract, a mathematical description. The entity doesn't. Go ahead. Yeah, it doesn't. We don't actually know what it's actually made from. You guys normally say it's energy.
Yeah, we have Higgs fields, energy. Yeah, okay. I don't understand. What's the inference? What's the argument? What's the inference? You're just saying like a bunch of hot air right now.
It only exists as conscious thought.
What?
Ergo, it requires
Yeshua, can you formulate a coherent sentence? If not, I'm gonna go. I have things to do. Please, come on. It's frustrating. Have a coherent thought. You haven't even said nothing. You've said is even clear if it's propositional, if it can even be true or false. It's just like you're a gibberish generating machine. Tell me a coherent sentence that supports your view.
Okay, I'll try one more time. The substance of the universe, what everything is made from, the entities from which it is made, starting at hadrons. What are they?
A question to me is not supporting your view. You not knowing what things are made out of in their mereological composition, or whether there is composition on mereology, or whether or not things can be just broken down into energy or particles or whatever, is doing that speculation, or your personal incredulity is doing fuck all for producing an argument, right? So produce an argument.
No.
No, so you won't produce an argument. So you have got so on the call screen it says consciousness proves God, and you're telling me you don't have an argument that generates a conclusion that consciousness proves God?
Well, my argument is that it only exists as conscious thought. The universe only exists as conscious.
What's the premises to your argument?
Ergo, it requires supreme consciousness to exist at all.
Okay, that's the claim. What supports it?
The fact that we can't say what it is made from.
So your argument's from personal incredulity. You're saying because you can't imagine X, you can't describe X, therefore it's Y. That's your argument? Is just to commit a fallacy, personal incredulity? Wow, way to go. Way to end the show.
Oh, really?
No, see you later. Yep, learn what personal incredulity is. All right, that was easy. That was fast.
Oh, hey. Sorry,
no, you're good. I'm familiar with that caller. I should put it that way.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I just want to remind everybody to don't forget the question of the week. Okay. So I'm really interested because I think you set the bar up very high there, JMike. That was a very interesting topic. So I'm gonna tune into the next show next week to see what people's answers are. So please do that. And okay, so let me see. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today, everyone. Make sure you visit atheist-community.org for the latest on what's been happening, and feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I was very happy about the calls today. We got a whole bunch of theists. Usually we get mostly atheists. This was, I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was very engaging. It was very back and forth. I think you got a little bit frustrated, but overall, I think you had fun too as well.
So let me peel back the curtain. My frustration stems just from a long week of discussing stuff with theists, and I was hoping for the A game, and I don't think I got it. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate like talking about the Kalam and stuff that, that's, but I just more so listened. So, but, yeah, it's frustrating in the sense that my patience on, like, I genuinely want to know why people, like, what reason supports your view. And it's like I wake up Groundhog's Day every day with not getting an answer to the question. And it just gets really frustrating. So none of that's reflective of you or anybody else. Apologize if I do look grumpier today. It's just, it wears on you after a little bit, I think.
No, it's like, so. I'm going to come up with a very easy to understand example of the difference between the claim and the argument you need to provide it, so that I use that as a device when people are just repeating their claims without backing. I'm just going to use that as an example. I think it will be very helpful. Before we end the show, I want to send a big thank you to our crew who put this show together every week. And guys, can we have the crew cam? Oh no, that makes sense. Oh my God, why did you do this to us? Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not the same. Okay, it's not the same.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, I don't know how to deal with stuff like this. But anyways, we missed the crew cam.
But Armin, nobody does. I mean, that's the whole process. Like, it's a whole feel out process. You don't know what to say to someone, how to comfort people or comfort yourself. What do you even do next, right? All the things that I did for so long was so heavily ingrained, and so thank you to everybody that donated and that supported the fundraiser and all that, because that helps.
Wait,
in the little bit that it can.
We talking about the fundraiser. We already achieved the goal. We got $500. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody to donate. Thank you for everybody that got the fundraiser was for getting a memorial break for the crew cat, and you guys are amazing. Wow, that's impressive, actually. What a great community we have. All right, so we are just going to end the show. I'm really awkward at ending shows. I don't know what to say, so you keep seeing me saying like, "Oh, okay," and well, guys. So, but anyways, this was a great show. And I know what to say. Make sure you like the stream and leave a comment and share the show with as many people as you can. Okay, this is for people. You don't only have to support us financially. A lot of people I know want to find other ways to support the show, liking and leaving comments and recommending the show to as many people as you can. That's another way to support the show, and it doesn't cost you anything. So do that at least. There's no excuse for not liking the stream right now. So do it. I think that was a good ending. I'm doing good. All right. And also let me know in the comment if I'm hosting. I know I suck sometimes at hosting, but you could lie to me and tell me that I'm a great host. That will boost my ego. So leave that comment. That's a good comment. All right.
That's great.
All right, guys. This was a fun show, and then we'll see you again on next show. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's setting up your business, what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your life.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.